sorry, but I'm having problems.
Okay.
Hannah, do you want to just
It's
send me? Oh, what's going
yeah,
on?
yeah, it's like wants me to do permissions and then I'm gonna have to like exit it and come back in. So let me just drop this and if someone else can wait, let me make
I
sure I'm
can
doing
I if you want to drop in the chat, I'll run it for you.
okay. Uh,
In the meantime, I'll just quickly introduce myself and say, hi, I'm Marion Wynn. I, in my day job, I work at Burns McDonnell as a D&I strategist. I have a 7-year-old at Holiday Montessori. Love him. He's cute. He's great. I'm not a KCPS alum, but I love KCPS with all my heart. Public education is the backbone for community building and vital to our communities. I have the lovely pleasure of introducing Hannah, who I've known since high school. She is actually a KCPS alum, I think, right? Didn't you go to Lincoln? Yeah. Okay. You can talk about that. But we actually met in high school when we were both at St. Teresa's together. But yeah, of the many friends that I have that have much cooler and much smarter friends that I have, Hannah is got her doctorate. I love calling her Dr. Bailey. So everyone, Dr. Bailey.
okay, I don't make people call me Dr. Bailey, but um I'm glad somebody appreciates the work I put in to get that degree. So yes, I am a grant writer for a nonprofit consulting company called Healthy Communities Consulting. Sorry, my son just walked in. Um, and I have a grant writing, a grant consulting background. I wrote grant applications in graduate school, and then I shifted to writing grants professionally after for for consulting companies that work with a broad range of clients. So that could be small arts organizations, it could be workforce development, it could be education, and I've helped people get grants from big federal agencies as well as smaller foundations like the KCPS Foundation. So the presentation I've put together is geared toward this specific opportunity, but it is also helpful for anyone who's hoping to write a grant from various types of funders. So yes, you can move to the next slide. So what is a grant? I mean, this might seem like a basic, everyone who's watching this is probably applying for one, but it is important to know that it's a pool of money given to your organization or you as an individual to support specific costs for a specific project or purpose over a specific period of time. So that word specific is used there 3 times because when you're applying for a grant, you very, very often from funders have to explain exactly what you're going to be using it for, how long you're going to be using it, and yeah, what the impact you intend to have with that money will be. So, like a loan, you have to apply for it by describing what you're going to do with the funds, but it does not have to be paid back. It's given to you um, generally because a funder sees an important purpose in what you're doing. They want to help, they want to fund you to help further their mission. So it's very important to know the mission and the purpose of the fund you're applying for or the organization who will be funding you. And often, and it is the case for this grant because I did do some digging, you will have to show, not necessarily for this one, what you spent the money on. Not all grants make you give receipts, but they will often ask for a report or some sort of testimony, some sort of written communication as to what you did with the money and what the impact was and if it helped you achieve your goals. So yes, the funders like to know that you did what you said you were going to do. They don't often just give you the money and never talk to you again. So yeah, that's a general overview of what a grant is. If you want to move to the next one, the next slide. So here's just grant fact or fiction. And that'll these will help us think about the grant that you will be applying for. So grants are a great way to get money fast. This is fiction. You usually, it takes anywhere from 1 month to 6 months after you submit them to be funded, sometimes even longer. So, if this is money that you need for a very immediate cost, I would try to find another way to get that funded. Usually this is for long-term planning and not needs that you need to get met right away. Grants are almost always for specific projects and seldom for general operating support. So that's a fact. It's very uncommon to find grants for general operating expenses. And that means for the purposes of this application, you really have to get specific about what your project is. It isn't just, oh, we have needs in this class and we need money to support our students. That is not a project. That is probably the case for all of you, for every instructor or school personnel, but you need to really think about something creative, a way to get the needs met that you're describing in your application. So it helps to think creatively about how you're going to solve that problem. The way your grant is written is more important than the way the project is designed. That's fiction. Sometimes we think, oh, I'm applying for a grant. This is a project. I need to write it beautifully. And while it is important to make sure you don't have typos and that you're creating a narrative, the most important thing is typically the project. Typically, you are needing to make sure that you're addressing all the questions that they're asking, that you're carefully reading the guidelines and developing something that's in line with what they're asking for, and that you are adhering to all the requirements in terms of how you're putting the budget together, what documents you're providing, making sure you're describing clearly what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, what your objectives are. That's more important than spending a lot of time, writing a beautiful narrative. They don't read it that closely that they're like, oh, I love the way the sentence was put together. It's more about the project. So it's okay to submit your grant at the very last second as long as you meet the deadline. There are a lot of teachers watching this, and you know that waiting to the last minute is never the best option. And that's typically because you are opening yourself up to errors that can't be easily remedied if you wait to the last minute. And so I know I don't have an account, I haven't logged in, but I noticed that for this grant, you have to create an account and submit something through a portal, if I'm correct. And so, yes, it's important to log in well before you're planning on submitting the grant so that you make sure you have all the questions down. I mean, what I do in my job is I go into the portal, I make a document with all the questions, I write things in my document, and then I input it into the portal. But I make sure I'm copying very closely what is in the portal so that I don't have anything last minute that it's like, oh no, I didn't address that. And then it's too late because you're up against a deadline. So it's important to give yourself time, not only to write the application, but just to troubleshoot the portal and to make sure you know everything that needs to be submitted and uploaded in there. You can go to the next one. So project development is the most important element, I would say, and this is a project-based grant. So you are being asked to think about key priority areas and develop a project in line with the foundation's sort of focus areas. So take time to develop a solid and creative project. So like we said, that grants shouldn't fund general operating activities, day-to-day activities, you know, we need more books or something, but how do we creatively describe and address that need? How will this, you know, period, this project that lasts maybe for a specific period, if it's something related to an educational activity, or you know, you're transforming your classroom in some way into something that now has this component added as a result of the project you're developing. So showcase your strengths. Think about Josephine, sweetie, can you go to daddy? Um, we have every kid walking in. I have 3 kids, but the 2 bigger ones have both come to visit me during this. So yeah, I'd say take some time brainstorming and maybe talk it out with people and think about how to meet the need of whatever problem you're identifying in a creative and engaging way. And then it's important for this grant, and for any grant you apply for, is develop project goals that align with the funder's mission and goals. So go on to the funder's website. I mean, with KCPS Foundation, it might feel obvious like what the goals are, but go on and really determine, like, are there any new initiatives they're identifying this year? Are there any priority areas that we're saying we really want these issues addressed? Are there any things that they seem to really be focusing on? And describe your project in a way that aligns with the funder's goals. And ultimately, yes, explain why they shouldn't want to invest money in your project, because you are going, they can't fund everybody. You know, if they were funding everyone, it wouldn't be a competition where you have to make the case for your money. So really explain why they should fund you, and why you know, why your project aligns with projects that they say they want to fund. Okay, you can go to the next one. So the application writing process, this is something that I like to do before every grant, is to make a document, or at the top of my application, make sure due dates are clearly articulated, all sort of requirements. I don't know if this particular opportunity requires additional documents, but a lot of times grants will have you upload. Okay, this one doesn't. But do you need a budget? How detailed does the budget need to be? Make sure you are clear on all of that while you are writing, because you know, you don't want to have to go back and be like, oh, actually what I'm describing, you know, the budget doesn't align. So just be clear on that before you begin writing. Write your grant for a general audience. The people reviewing might not be, you know, might not have gone to school for education, might not know all the technical terms, theoretical pedagogy or whatever. So make sure to write it in a way that is geared toward a more general audience. When you're explaining why it matters, think about, you know, why would a person who just cares about education but might not be working in a school, why would they be able to understand why this project is important? Be concise, but also fully address each question. I mean, a big problem with grant writing can be that you spend a lot of time in the first couple paragraphs really like explaining the problem for too long. And it's like, okay, but we actually need you to get clear on what you're going to do. That in the first couple of sentences, try to say, okay, with this funding, I will do X, Y, Z. So that the reader is really clear on what your project is, and not just, oh, they're spending a lot of time describing this issue and I'm not quite sure how they're going to solve it. Yes. We can go to the next one. Budgets. So this is important, that you should be very specific about what you're going to spend the money on. When you're creating a budget, don't just say, oh, I'm gonna use, $200 for classroom supplies. Well, what are those? What supplies are you going to buy? I mean, you don't have to get minute to every last penny, but you have to be very specific about what exactly it is that you're going to be using the grant funds for. Brainstorm fully to anticipate every budget need when you're trying to think through how you're going to spend funding. Think about, okay, the example I use is the project going to make a mess? Okay, well, let's budget that in supplies to help with every, setup, execution, and then cleanup if that's a component of your project. And don't use the grant budget to request items outside the scope of your budget. It's, yes, only request things related to the project, because your funder might not be willing to fund your request if you're asking for a lot of things that don't feel necessary. And you can go to the next one. And then I sent this out last year, the slides, but I also put together a list of other grants that teachers and schools are eligible to apply for. If you are like, oh, I'm realizing I can get a lot of needs met through grants. There's a lot of organizations that specifically will fund classroom requests. Some of them are local companies, some of them are national organizations. Generally speaking, if you haven't written a lot of grants, it's usually easier to get funding from more local community funders, because they can really understand, okay, I get what the need is for this project in our community. And the pool is smaller, because when you're applying for national grants, they have a lot more requests to consider. But yeah, it's a good way to try to get money. But as I said, it's really, it's never a surefire, like, I'm definitely going to get these funds. But if you have a need met for a need for your school or for your classroom, then I can share the slides and you can look at the list of potential funders. And that's all I have. So thank you.
That's awesome. Hannah, thank you very much for jumping in. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen for a couple minutes here and give people a chance to ask a couple questions. So, any questions from the group?
So I am curious. I noticed there's different categories in like amounts of funding up to for different types of asks, is sort of how it seemed, like $1,000 for this kind of thing, 2,000 for this kind of thing. So one of the things that I'm curious is what I'm asking for, just an operating expense sort of thing. Like the chairs in my classroom, they all have these hairline fractures that just pinch the back of kids' legs when they sit in them. And so it's like tape. So I was like, shoot, is asking for chairs. I don't have enough to get a whole set of new classroom chairs, but is that kind of thing something that's like, yep, that's totally out of the scope of what people would use grants for? Of like, oh, maybe it's turning it
No.
into flex seating kind of things. Yeah.
Yeah. And Hannah, I'm going to assume that question is more for me. I would say no. Actually, one of the things I like to do, and we did this last year a little bit, and I'd like to do more of it this year, is as applications come in, I want to review them with leadership to make sure they see kind of what the requests are. So to me, in this case, like, we can absolutely get a grant for you to get better chairs, but it may be that there are funds available or opportunities available for KCPS to replace that as part of kind of just the normal cost of doing business. So I would say, like, if that's the need in your classroom, submit it. We put those guidelines on there. Marion, I don't want to speak for you, but I think in general the board tends to be fairly flexible in amounts. That we don't really go over $5,000. But I think we're generally pretty flexible in amounts and kind of where, your level of creativity and how you kind of fit it into a district priority. We're pretty forgiving in that space.
But yeah, I was curious if it's more like, ooh, if you can incorporate like this, what was it, the Burns and McDowell or something about every school is getting a book nook. So all the schools had like book nook creation competition things and so it's like that made kids be thinking about all sorts of things about how we should do different. So is it like, I should loop my request within that kind of framework around flex seating options, because that's more of a buy-in than saying like all of these black plastic chairs have these cracks that hurt kids when they sit on them sometimes.
No,
and I don't
no,
have enough black plastic chairs to just replace all of the broken ones.
I would say like we're probably the most forgiving grant. I don't know, we're not recipients. We're recipients of applications, I guess, that you're going to run across. I think we want to fund you. We want to give you money. We can't fund everyone, as Santa said earlier. We don't have that money, but we do, I think, move every possible dollar we can to make sure that we're meeting as many needs as possible. So I would worry more in terms of your application. I would think more about kind of how you're telling the story of how this impacts your kids than I would about trying to to build a logic model or anything like that about how it's working.
Okay.
Marion, is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say two things from Hannah's presentation as far as operational costs. Those are really just like the supplementary cost that is a part of your larger project. But if your project is just getting replacement chairs, that's different than saying, "Oh, hi, Josephine," than trying to get on top of whatever else is, I think, just to clarify. And then also what Hannah said as far as, who's reviewing these applications, it does help us because we're not teachers, right? To be able to paint that picture a little bit in terms of what your classroom needs are, because these are teacher grants. These are for you. You're the teacher. We're going to, we rely on what you're able to tell us in terms of what your needs are. And if it's chairs, then that's your project, right? It's the supplementary things, I think, that you have to consider on top of that, but we just need the specifics if it is an operational cost.
And just to provide some context, last year we approved 38 grants last year, totaling about $75,000, and those grants ranged from things that I think are very similar to what you're talking about, Alexander. From we replaced the risers at at an elementary school because the ones that were there were patently unsafe. So what we've done investments like that. We also have done some kind of weird and wild grant requests. We did microphones. That was another good one. A lot of differentiated seating, some libraries, some books, that sort of thing. The other thing that we can do is, we have a lot of community partners. It's a growing list all the time. And so sometimes there'll be requests that come in that we can actually find a community partner that can provide that. So, classroom libraries is a good thing to kind of think about in that space. There are a lot of partners that will help you with that. Also, we get requests every year for, renovating teachers' lounges, that sort of thing. And so we've gotten a couple of good outcomes with some of those grants as well with some of our corporate partners. So again, be creative and give us something to talk about and think about. And again, as I said, we really are trying to fund as many people as we can, and we're going to try to find a solution for as many folks as humanly possible.
I have two questions. Can I jump in?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, fire away.
All right. So my first question is, in the presentation Hannah had, I wanted to look at the list of grants and I clicked it and it wasn't opening up for me. So if maybe we could get that somehow.
Yeah, I'll check the permissions on that.
I
Okay.
can
And make
also,
sure it's
I can also, Hannah, I'll download the presentation if it's okay, and I can link that also on our on our portal, so people should be
okay.
able to open that. And
Says
Okay.
anyone with the link should be able. Let me try again. If not, I can email the list to Marion and then she can make sure it just gets sent out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. And my other
Cool.
question is, my idea for my grant is it's a school-wide initiative and it's a lot larger than the need for $5,000. I've gotten some grants in the past. Last year I got around 7,000 and I had more than 10,000 in the previous years. So I have a little bit of luck, but I guess I'm just wondering, is this grant open for me to get funded by multiple grant sources? And then how should I put that into my application? Like, should I say, I've applied for this grant and I'm waiting, I've applied for this grant and maybe I got the funds? How do I do that?
yeah, that's a good question. I think if you're going to pair up this grant with other grants, other opportunities, that's probably something you should be able to kind of tell us with some certainty when we're in either the budget or the budget narrative. There's a chance for you to kind of tell us how you're going to raise the money, where these additional funds are going to come from. I think one of the big considerations would be, is this a project that's going to be dependent on you getting all of the funds? Or if you didn't get another dollar, could you still do something meaningful on a smaller scale with the funds that are coming through the foundation, if that's helpful?
Yeah, thank you. It is.
Sure. All right. Well, I don't see any other questions. I do want to just real quickly make sure that everybody knows that we are using a different portal this year. In the past, we've just used Google Form, which was, I think, probably fairly easy to use on the front end. Was less easy on the back end when we had to take all of that and put it into a document. And so this year we've launched our own grant portal, which I think is pretty easy to use. If you've not logged in yet, you just go to apply.kcpsef.org and you can create a profile and it'll take you right to the teacher grant page. You can click that, you can submit there, you can save your work, you can upload documents, all of those things. But if you do have trouble with that or you do have a difficulty, please let me know. It is in its its first year, so I know there are going to be challenges and things that don't work the way they're supposed to. So if you just let me know if those come up, we'll make sure we get those addressed. Okay. Well, if there's nothing else, again, I just want to say thank you to Hannah, who's sharing with us some great wisdom. And Hannah, you again have, I think, made something that's a really complex, intimidating thing really easy to understand. And I know that that's not easy to do. So thank you for spending a little time with us. And Marion, always nice to see you and look forward to seeing what kind of grants we come back with. So again, I'm going to stop recording now. And with that, we will go ahead and adjourn for the evening. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Bailey.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you,
Bye.
Dr. Bailey.
Yeah. Thanks.